Hello, everybody. Welcome to this 48th episode of the REBT Advocates with Dr. Michael R. Edelstein and me, Tommy Bateman. Today, we once again have our favoriteest guest among our other favoriteest guests, Dr. Debbie Joffe Ellis, who is a professor at Columbia University, where the late, great Albert Ellis studied himself. She's also a speaker, writer, and educator and therapist herself. Debbie, welcome.
It's great to be with you again, Tommy and Michael and all the viewers. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, very good. And today we were going to discuss, start off with gratitude, and I think you've made a great addition to REBT in terms of highlighting it and the use of it and importance of it. So would you tell us more about that, Debbie?
With pleasure. Interestingly, in recent years, both in kind of a common regular media, TV and magazines and newspapers and the like, there are more and more articles about the benefit and value of gratitude. But in addition to that, there's more and more solid scientific evidence that people who practice the attitude of gratitude regularly have a stronger immune system. It has impact on the cardiovascular system and more. To be specific, a close, dear friend of mine is one of New York's most highly regarded cardiologists, and she subscribes to, as most in the field would, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and she shared with me, it was last year, an article that talked about and expressed all the scientific evidence supporting what I just told you, the impact on the physical health of the body of having regular gratitude. And, most of the article I couldn't understand because there were long words, medical terms and graphs and this and that, but the conclusion I could. And so it all, bringing it back to REBT, which in my view, and I think you, Michael and Tommy, and hopefully many, if not all of the viewers, share the understanding of the holistic nature of REBT. And it's more than just the thoughts impact and create the emotions, which impact and influence the behavior, and it's kind of circular and pretty much inseparable. But in there is also the impact on the physical well-being of the body and our physical health. And so gratitude has always, as far as I understand, been, if not as overt as I might make it these days when I teach and write, but at the very least it's been implicit. The manner, the personality of REBT is that of realistic optimism. And gratitude is one of the attitudes that fuels that. And I can give you many examples, both about famous people or people in the media who in disastrous or traumatic circumstances chose, and it's a choice for most of us. Perhaps there are some saintly people that no matter how brutal the circumstance, the gratitude arises. It's highly possible. I don't think, at least in my observation, there aren't that many humans at that level yet. But many of us can choose to practice more of that more of the time. So in addition to stories on the media and so forth, in my personal life, observing Albert Ellis practice gratitude daily during the chapter in our life that was fraught with very ugly behavior from others that was difficult, and also in the lives of family members. So I don't want to go on and on here without giving you space to comment or ask another question. But to conclude this phase of what I'm sharing with you, I chose to give greater emphasis on the gratitude element of REBT because I noticed in the years since Al died, 2007, and particularly in the last couple of years, 2016, it appears that many more people are succumbing to stress, high stress, and higher anxiety. And one of the things that REBT reminds us, if we have a goal to suffer less emotional misery and greater joy in life, that despite and including difficult and challenging times, let us daily focus on what still is good and on what we can be grateful for. And I practice that in my life. I share it when I write and teach, and I also usually subscribe that my clients do it as their activity or their homework between sessions.
Very good, very good. And, just to hear you speak about gratitude leads me to feel grateful that you're so vociferous about it. Now, when you work with clients, Debbie, in what form might the homework assignments or your recommendations be? Are they specific or general? And how do you suggest that?
They're specific. I suggest that they acquire, if they haven't already got, a journal that they can write in, and that every day, and I suggest that first thing in the morning might be a really good time to do it, but if they don't, then any time will be fine. And I also say, as many times as you remember to, write down what you can be grateful for. And some say, oh, I don't know about writing, whatever. Then I ask them, because in REBT, work between therapist and client is very often a collaboration. Of course, the therapist has the benefit of the solid immersion in the knowledge of REBT. The client presumably doesn't have it that much, although I've worked with REBT therapists who are excellent therapists, and this can be helpful sometimes to have another one work through things with you. But anyway, so yeah, it's helpful, especially if it's a new practice, to, I would say, at least in the first 3 months, write down every day what you can be grateful for. And then if some people say, but what if I'm not really feeling it? Then I encourage them to use your mind and think. Think about people who are in much worse situations than you are. And even if on the inside you aren't soft and fuzzy and I'm so grateful, use your head and just write down the facts of what you as a human being who can think and presumably write and taste and feel and do other things, write it down. And it doesn't have to be something different every day. You know, some people say, oh, I couldn't think of anything new. Well, no, it had better be authentic. And often it is the same every day. And that reinforces your appreciation of it. If there's time at any point, I'd like to share a personal application or how my daily application benefited me during a bad time.
I think we should get into that here in a bit.
Good.
I want to kind of make a pair. Well, I wanted to ask a question, or at least kind of reframe this and compare this to what we commonly understand as REBT. So REBT kind of sees in a bit humans as kind of absolutistic demand-making machines. We are must factories. We are able to say this must happen. I must not experience this. And in a similar way, you know, we have an amygdala and a stress response and an anxiety response in order to keep us alive. I mean, it helps us react, you know, properly to a saber-toothed tiger jumping out and trying to eat you. And so we're always looking for threats. And I would posit that it's kind of in our nature to always look for negative things that could hurt us. And that's what we are biologically predisposed to do, and perhaps even culturally predisposed to do. But in the same way that REBT, the ABCs of 1, 2, 3, and the targeting the three basic musts asks us to eliminate those absolutistic demands. What you're bringing, the gratitude piece, has us eliminate focus on the negative and specific focus on the positive, so that becomes ingrained in us, like our old biological ingrained way of thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And Debbie, in terms of homework assignments again, and I think you said that you tell clients, unless you feel it authentically, don't write it down. Is that correct?
If I said that, that's not exactly what I meant. If they don't feel it authentically, I say, think about it. And even though you're not feeling that soft, fuzzy, oh, I'm so grateful, but in your mind you can think, well, I am luckier than the person who has no feet, you know, or the person who's homeless. And so don't wait to feel all kind of soft and mushy on the inside to feel that writing down what logically you can be grateful for, that has impact. Does that clarify?
Yes. And I think you also might be saying that if you feel it to some extent, but not 100%, then get in touch with the part that you do feel it, and that part is authentic, and work on that and write that down. It still qualifies as gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude is an attitude. It's kind of a mixture of emotion and cognition, in a way. I think it's kind of an emotion. And so in the absence of that visceral feeling of, you know, which is lovely and happens a lot, but in the absence of that, if someone is exhausted, if someone is not well, if someone is suffering very intensely, in the absence of that visceral kind of yumminess, they can still choose to use the power of their logical mind to remind themselves that I am so fortunate, because there, but for other circumstances go I, you know, I can do this. Again, focusing on what still is good in their life, despite and including whatever is difficult that's going on.
Right, and it also includes what still is good in other people, and in that sense, it's anti-anger, because part of anger is condemning and damning someone else. So if you're angry or have a tendency to anger, and you write down the things you appreciate and you're grateful about in these people that you're angry at, then that'll tend to combat the anger. Would you agree?
Yes, but when you say anger, REBT distinguishes between healthy anger and unhealthy anger, which is usually called rage. So if you're talking about healthy anger, REBT isn't, in my view, and Al's view, its goal isn't to get rid of all anger. What do I mean by healthy anger? So REBT is humanistic to the core, and there's an implicit belief, in a sense, that if not for disturbance in our thinking and or biology, a majority of us would lean towards rather doing good than harm. That's kind of an implicit understanding within REBT. And so, as a highly ethical philosophy, as well as being a therapy, it would be encouraging of individuals who witness or experience brutality or unethical behavior or cruelty to not be blasé about it, but to be willing to adopt, again, a healthy attitude, a healthy perspective about it in order to create that healthy adrenaline-fueled, no, but the ability to pause and choose, now, what do I do now? That's absent when one experiences rage. When there's rage, there's usually a blind, unthinking reaction that very often causes more harm and no good. And so, according to REBT and the Ellis theory of healthy anger, that feeling of no can fuel a person to make good choices. What do I do now? Run for the hills, call 911, go do a workout and then do my ABC of REBT? You know, it allows us to be in charge of our behavior. And that can be highly beneficial to the situation, or at the very least, not make it worse. And so gratitude is not to kind of numb down any healthy anger, but rather to help maintain a stability within. And going back to what you were saying, Tommy, that kind of survival instinct that you were saying or implying we had better not get rid of. And I think you started off by saying something like, and remind me of if I got it wrong.
I was rambling, so forgive me. I am wont to do.
No, but it was, you were saying something, we are creatures of musts.
Like we're very adept at creating absolutistic musts and demands.
Yeah, humans are human. Just to add to that, humans are must and should manufacturing animals. We all have a tendency, a biological predisposition, to escalate our strong preferences into demands, and that's why the three of us are in this.
And that's really the point, that word, the tendency. Because I think in your initial statements, Tommy, it sounded like we are, and yeah, we do have, and Albert Ellis said all the time, we have that predisposition, that tendency. You know, humans have the ability to choose to allow themselves to be crazy or non-crazy. You know, that sounds flippant, but as Al would remind us, you know, we're, again, if we're not cognitively impaired, if we have the ability to think in fairly clear and logical ways, then we not only can construct self-defeating beliefs that lead to unhealthy, debilitating emotions, but if we choose to, if we know we have the choice, hence the gift of the podcasts you do, you educate people that we have a choice. Then we can think about our thinking and discern. And when we notice we've constructed irrational, unhealthy beliefs, can deconstruct them by zapping them through disputation and then reconstruct healthy new ideas. So I guess I'm being nitpicky that when I hear, you know, we are creatures that must, I tend to think, having indoctrinated myself to the best of my ability in REBT language, that we have that tendency, but equally, if we're, again, cognitively able, we can build up the muscle of the tendency and ability to do the opposite.
Michael slaps my wrist all the time about my semantic accuracy, so I will take your slap to the wrist as well. So
we just have
no, that wasn't a slap, that was a kiss on your wrist.
That was a sledgehammer to the face, Debbie.
That is your interpretation, Tommy.
Stop the brawling, everybody.
Okay.
We just have another minute, so I'd like to add a cliffhanger for our next podcast with you, Debbie, and that is I have a different view of REBT and anger, which I got from Albert Ellis's book, How to Live with and Without Anger. And in fact, he has a chapter in there which he calls The Insanity of Anger. And he defines anger in part as condemning and damning another person. So the way I see it is REBT talks about healthy or appropriate or helpful assertiveness, determination, and passion on the one hand, and unhealthy condemning, damning, and anger on the other. But this just proves that good people can disagree.
And Debbie, I know we're getting a little feedback from Michael on that last one, but I know and that's fine. I know you wanted to mention, and I think we need to talk about anger and REBT together because I like brawling, obviously. You wanted to mention how gratitude has affected your when you were through a difficult time. Let's talk about that.
Tommy?
Yeah.
And Debbie, could we, since we're over 10 minutes, on to 12 minutes, could we leave this also as a cliffhanger to our next podcast with Debbie, and we'll be sure to have you back, Debbie.
Okay, sure. So it sounds like we've got two cliffhangers. Gee, now I'm getting really scared. So this is your teaser. My gratitude story is about my being hit by a speeding bicycle and succumbing to concussion, and tune in to the next exciting episode to find out what happened. And then, I'd really like to talk about anger with you because you, Michael, seem to put anger in the same category as damning and judging, but I don't think they're in the same bundle. I think judging and damning can lead to anger, but not necessarily so.
Right.
So much to talk about.
That's a great statement of our difference there. So I'm grateful we have more to talk about with you, and we have another excuse to have you back. But thank you, everyone. What's that?
You don't need an excuse. I'm willing. It's a pleasure.
Great. And I'm grateful to all our viewers and commenters. So we'll be back in a short week for another podcast. Thank you very much, Debbie, Joffe Ellis, for joining us. And thank you, Tommy, for being the great technician here. And to all of you who enjoyed this episode and some of our others, give us a like on our page and on Facebook. And please subscribe to stay on the rational side of life.